Chapter 4. Meeting Belecha. Arrgh! A deep growl rising to a scream ripped the silence as a dark form dropped from above, rearing up toward Rory. Rory had been sitting quietly, watching the stars, leaning against the wall of the hole. What? Rory's head jerked back and slammed against the hard dirt wall. Ow! Then he saw his attacker. Billy! You jerk. Rory rubbed his head and glared at Billy, who was grinning, very pleased with Rory's panic. Daydreaming again, Rory? Maybe last night was a figment of your imagination. Hey, maybe tonight we can see a woman with ginormous... Rory threw a rock at him. Shut up, perv. How'd it go with the guy today? You get a job? Billy started stacking branches in the fire pit. Not yet. He's a slimy one, all right. So it's no go? No. I think he had something he didn't want me to see, so he said to come back tomorrow. All I have to do is let him think he's ripping me off, and I've got a job. You are evil. Billy tried to look innocent. Me? He finished building the fire, pulled a kitchen match out of his jeans, lit it on his pant leg, and set the wood burning. Rory had never seen him take more than one match. Billy came over and sat down next to Rory. They sat watching the branches catch. After a while, they heard James's steady tread through the brush. He came to the edge and called down. How long have you been here? Billy answered, Not long. I took a quiet walk around before I made Rory mess his jeans. I didn't see anyone hiding. Maybe I should take another look. Why? We heard you coming. Anyone else would too. They'd just hide. James thought about this and nodded. Makes sense. He jumped down. Anyone here from Tima? Both Rory and Billy shook their heads. Right here, said Tima, jumping into the hole. I saw James coming, so I trailed behind, just to see if anyone was watching. And? Asked Billy. Tima shook her head. Well, what do you think we should do? Asked James. Why don't you put the stone on the ground? We'll sit around it, suggested Tima. You do have it, don't you, Rory? No, duh. I decided it would be best to leave it at home, replied Rory, pulling the rough square from his pocket. He set it on the ground. Nothing happened. Maybe he only comes when we aren't looking, said Tima. Maybe Rory was dreaming, said Billy. Rory gave him a dirty look. And I dreamed the rock, too? You had a fire going. Maybe it needs to be hot, suggested James. But it wasn't in the fire. It was around his neck, said Rory. Maybe you should all bark like dogs and roll around in the dust, came a voice from over near the fire. Can it, Billy? Scolded Tima. That wasn't me. Look, said James, pointing toward the fire pit. Above the fire, a small ball of smoke shimmered. Did you use wet wood? The fire shouldn't be smoking that much. Rory got up and went to the fire pit, waving his hand through the ball of smoke. The ball didn't move. It didn't smoke from the wood. Look, it doesn't move. Watch where you're putting your hand, youngster, came a voice from the ball of smoke. Rory backed away quickly as the smoke filled out into the man he had seen last night. Belecha was grinning. Wish I had a camera. You little pelchas look like you've seen a ghost. Well, isn't that what you are? A ghost or something like it? Asked Tima. It's got to be some kind of trick, said Billy. Someone is yanking our chain and is waiting to make us all do something totally embarrassing, then laugh their butts off. Belecha sighed. You always were a difficult one to convince, Tinglin. Even when you were an old man, you wouldn't believe a wolf was a wolf until it chewed your leg off. My name is Billy, and what do you mean when I was an old man? Later on that. Let's just say I've known you all for a long time in a lot of places that you don't remember yet. Based on what I know, each one of you is trying really hard to convince yourself you aren't seeing some old man floating like a ball of smoke. Do I have that right? They looked at each other. Rory was relieved the others were seeing whatever it was. Billy looked totally suspicious. Tima seemed content to see how everything played out. James... Well, James's mouth was hanging open wide, and his eyes were filled with panic. Belecha looked at James and spoke soothingly. Don't you go crazy yet, Pekame. You start yelling and running around, and you'll never find out what's going on. Everyone else will. It was exactly the right thing to say. James could never stand to leave a riddle unsolved. James didn't say anything, but he stopped looking like he was about to make a run for the hills. Belecha said, "Listen, hombres, here's how it goes. There are a lot of things you need to do, and even more you need to learn. If you get it wrong, the world ends, and so do you." He slapped his hands together like he was crushing a mosquito. He held up a hand to stop both Tima and Billy. "I'll explain, but we don't have much time, so first off, you have to believe I'm not blowing smoke." He looked down at his body, which still wasn't completely formed and was faintly glowing in the moonlight. "Well, I guess I am blowing smoke in a way." "You're blowing something," said Billy. Belecha glared at him. "You all have to see what the problem is. We're going to take a little trip. You want to back out afterwards, you have that option. But first you have to see the what and the why." "Where are we going?" asked Rory. "Not far. You might even recognize it." "Who's driving?" asked Billy. "Can you pull a car out of the fire, too?" "No driving. We aren't going in body. It's about energy. We'll travel the web." "Web?" asked Tima. "You'll see. You won't have to take it on faith for long. This once, do what I say. Will you grant me that?" They looked at each other. "Look, I did appear in a ball of smoke. That's got to count for something. Your bodies will never leave this spot, so what's there to lose?" Rory nodded. Tima looked thoughtful and nodded too. James gritted his teeth. "I'm in." Billy shrugged. "Sure, knock yourself out. If this is a trick, it's a good one." Belecha grinned. "It's a great ride, I promise. Now, everyone sit back down around the stone, each one of you facing a corner, and touch that corner with a finger." They followed his directions. Belecha faded into a glowing ball and floated above the stone. "Now pay attention and hold on to the rings." "What rings?" shouted James. He had to shout because a roaring filled the hole. It sounded like a hurricane was blowing in, but not a single grain of sand was moving. A shimmering mist filled the air, blocking out the stars. "You'll see." The roaring increased, and Rory felt a pull on his hair. The ground began to shake, and Belecha began to rise, pulling them up off the ground. As he did, the stone grew. From each corner a large ring extended. Belecha shouted, "Hold on tight. It's time to go web riding, and I don't want to try and find you if you let go." They rose through the swirling, shimmering mist until, like an airplane breaking through the clouds, they cleared the haze and saw, stretched out like a fishnet made of starfire, stretching in every direction, pulsing threads of light. Belecha said, "Welcome to the real world, Pelchas. Let's go for a ride."